This episode of the Managing Madrid Podcast is brought to you by the Managing Madrid Podcast preseason tour. That's right, our podcast is going to Los Angeles, Houston, and Dallas in that order. We are following Real Madrid around in the United States, everything apart from Orlando. Sorry, Orlando. But the first three cities on the preseason tour, we are going to be there at the games. We are also doing a podcast in each of those cities. If you want to come see us, meet other Madridistas, and perhaps get some signed stuff from the Real Madrid players, which we're giving away as prizes at the podcast. Click the link in the show notes and you can get in on the action, book your spot, and we'll see you there. This episode is also brought to you by the Beverly Hilton. If you're going to Los Angeles for the game at the Rose Bowl, make sure to book your stay at the Beverly Hilton. Great location right in Bev Hills. Also, great summer dining. Enjoy a fresh and flavorful new Circa 55 and Aqua Star pool menu featuring California classics and refreshing cocktails, from the sweet and savory prosciutto and summer melon to the fresh Circa ceviche and the Maine lobster roll. Find your craving on the menu and soak up the California sunshine all over at the Beverly Hilton. Coming up is a recording from today's Q&A session that happened in our Discord channel. Managing Madrid has a Discord channel, and if you're not a part of it, I think you'll have a lot of fun. There's well over 1,000 Madridistas now talking daily about Real Madrid. Everything from tactics, transfers, lineups, history, Femenino, Castilla, so much more. There's a lot of active discussion in the Discord channel. So every now and then, I go on this thing, which is called like a Discord stage. It's like a virtual room, and people from the Discord channel enter the virtual room. They can unmute their microphone, ask me questions and stuff like that. So it's really fun. Every now and then we do that. And that happened this morning. And the topics ranged everything from Mbappe, surprise, surprise, Real Madrid's best 11 if Mbappe arrives, some history questions, and more. Arda Güller, and also like, can he be reinvented into a Modric profile? Some funky right back options. Yeah, it's all there. We discussed it all, and that's what you're about to listen to. And yeah, I hope you enjoy it. I think you will. Let's get right to it. Thanks for listening, and here's today's episode. Hello, and welcome to a live edition of the Managing Madrid Podcast. This is your host, Kiyan Sobhani. It is Q&A live session in our Discord channel periodically, and I just checked before we started recording. The last time this happened was actually back in January, and I think around that time I had proclaimed that I would like to do it regularly. So bad job, Kiyan, on that. But I felt this was a good opportunity. We didn't put out a free podcast on the weekend, and it's now Monday, and the poor people who are not patrons did not have anything to listen to on their commutes apart from whoever they are forced to listen to, like Joe Rogan. Hopefully it's someone like, respectable and good, like the Spanish Football Podcast or something like that. But at any rate, this is a good opportunity to do a live Discord podcast where people here in our Discord channel, if you're not in our Discord yet, make sure to get in on that action. We're going to do a Q&A session. People are going to unmute their mic and ask questions. For those of you guys who are live on the call, there's also a chat box. And we can speak about anything, and even asking in the chat. We're going to go for 45 minutes or so, and then I got to run, okay? As I noted before we started recording, please keep your questions to one sentence or less, because the people listening at home on the podcast after the fact cannot hear your voice. They can only hear mine. So keep it short, and then I will repeat the question back into the microphone for the listeners, and then I will answer it, and then we'll keep moving, okay? So first up, we have Sun. Sun, how you doing, buddy? Okay, I'm gonna take that question first, Sun, and then I'll come back to you, okay? So the question for the listeners is it an option to put Militao right back and then put Alaba and Rudiger as center back? So here's the thing, Sun. I think I'm not championing the idea, because Militao is not a natural right back, and a lot of our solutions to these problems have always been, okay, well, we'll just put this guy there, put this guy here. They're not like pure and natural. These guys are not in their best position in these reinvented roles, unless it's like a sustained reinvention where something actually clicks. This player is at their best, like in the past, it's been Angel Di Maria dropping the midfield. That was fantastic for us. And there's been many examples in Carlo Ancelotti's coaching career that this has happened. But I think with Militao, I don't think it's his best position. That's one. He's better as a center back. I will say I don't hate it as an emergency option because I actually liked his performances there in the World Cup. I mean, I'd have to go back and look at my World Cup document notes to see what I actually wrote about him in those games, but I thought he was fine. I mean, one of the good things that he's actually a decent ball progressor from the right back spot. His long-range distribution is good. He can defend wingers on the flank, so from a pure defensive standpoint, I think it's fine. I just don't see it as a consistent solution. But in an event where Carvajal and Vasquez are injured, for example, I think it's fine. I mean, what are your options at that point? Militao, Nacho. Then there's the dream of a section of the Real Madrid fan base who want Fede Valverde as the right wing back. Those are essentially the options you run into. What was your second question, Soon? Yeah. Okay, got it. So the question was with Guler, and Sun brought up one of my segments where I spoke about Guler and how he's going to compete more on the right wing than with the actual midfielders in the squad. Although just a little caveat there, I think the point of that also was that he's not only competing with wingers, and he's also competing with the idea of like having four midfielders out there, having a diamond with Bellingham up top, or Fede on the right wing, or Rodrigo as the third attacker. So he's competing with many players, not just pure right wingers, because we don't have many pure right wingers in the squad. I mean, it's really down to Arda and Brahim. I saw like on Instagram one of the reels that went up today, I think it was, where people were saying, well, no, that's wrong. We have so many right wingers. We have Fede, we have Rodrigo, we have Brahim. To me, like the only actual right winger in that list is Arda and Brahim. And Brahim is more like he can play left wing, right wing, or down the middle. With Rodrigo, he can play right wing. He's better centrally or on the left. So it's not that you're like these people are wrong that these guys can't play right wing. They absolutely can. Same with Fede. But Fede's best position is in midfield. And I forget who the other person was. Maybe that was it. But yeah, so Arda Güler is competing with many players, even though he has a unique skill set on that right wing. So the question that Sun had was, can he be converted to a deeper player like a central midfielder and do what Modric did in the future? Of course, there was that quote that circulated in the Spanish press, I think, a week or two. Actually, it was from the Turkish press, I think, which I didn't really believe, to be quite honest, because it felt like too much. You have to be a fly in the wall to even know that this happened. It felt too opportunistic, but whatever you believe, the report was Modric wanted. Modric spoke to Arda and wanted Arda to kind of like, and that Modric is leaving next summer and that Arda can be his successor. I have to say, I don't see Arda being anything close to Modric from an all-around standpoint. And that's not necessarily a knock on Güler, because I don't think anyone really in the history of football can be what Modric was. I mean, Modric, we always knew that one day when Modric leaves, he is irreplaceable because he's such a unique profile. Defensively, offensively, the way his creativity, his genius, his composure, his understanding of the game, his work ethic on both ends of the field. I mean, probably the biggest thing that I would have trouble seeing Arda filling in is like the way Modric would play as a right back sometimes, covering for Carvajal, the way he would do so much defensive work on the wing. That stuff, I mean, is tough. Could he do the deep lying playmaking stuff? I think that's more attainable. But the guy who I think is more of the Modric replacement as an all-arounder who is creative, a brilliant creator, but also can track a lot of ground defensively is Bellingham. I think is the more, again, there's no perfect stylistic twin of Modric. So I don't think there ever will be. So Bellingham is not that, but from like just the ability to cover ground and create offense and do things as a two-way midfielder as at an elite level, I think Bellingham is probably the guy who's more suited to fit Modric, if that makes sense. Did you have any other questions, Soon? Well, I think I answered that anyway. So it's Bellingham, I think. Yeah, I think Bellingham, out of all the midfielders we have, has the highest ceiling for that two-way aspect. Like Camavinga can do a lot as an offensive ball carrier and someone who can break lines, but just from I'm speaking about just the creative and deep lying aspect. I think Bellingham is more suited to the ground coverage. I think Bellingham is more suited to that. Again, there's no perfect replacement, but I think it probably Bellingham is the best candidate in my opinion. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Soon. It was a pleasure having you on the call. Next up, Mahmoud Hafez. Mahmoud, just a reminder, guys, I'm going to probably just send this reminder to everybody that I bring up, so it's not directed towards anyone in particular, but just be mindful that the listeners at home can't hear your questions, so just keep it concise, and it makes it less editing work for me before uploading. Mahmoud, are you there? Yes. Yep. Thank you. I may have misheard, but you're speaking about if Mbappe comes, Zidane is more needed than Xabi Alonso to control his ego. Is that what you said? Listen, I probably, if there's anyone who can manage a locker room that has Mbappe, I feel like it probably is Zidane. But look, Zidane, I feel like to me is more like, I said this in the past at this point, and I don't know what Zidane wants to do or will do. I think the thing with Zidane is that he may not be interested in coming back and managing that. Maybe he has his eyes set on the French national team. I don't really know what the future entails for him. I do feel like he, in a lot of ways, is the kind of guy, like, you put out the bat signal anytime you really need an emergency, and he might lurk out of the shadows and come and help you out. Maybe similar to what Jupp Heynckes has done with Bayern throughout his career. Even after retiring, he just comes back when Bayern needs him, something like that. Let's not underrate Xabi Alonso's man management ability. That should be noted. So the reason why Xabi Alonso intrigues me a lot, Mahmoud, is that I feel like he has like the mix of the man management and the tactical brilliance. He's a highly respected figure by players. So I don't really know, like, if Xabi Alonso was coaching Real Madrid theoretically, why all of a sudden Mbappe would be out of control. Like, he can't even, Xabi Alonso's like melting down, Mbappe's running wild. There's fires all over the Bernabeu. I just don't see it. I in some capacity, I think this Mbappe ego stuff is a little bit overrated and maybe overstated. So I just want to put that out there. I don't look. Nothing is for sure. Nothing is for sure. Maybe I'm wrong on that. Maybe someone like Xabi Alonso comes in 2024 and it's out of control and he can't. I would just be shocked if that was the case. And I just don't know if Mbappe is actually that problematic. So I just wanted to put that out there. I don't really know what the definitive answer is. I don't think you're wrong in stating Zidane would harmonize a team like that with a player like Mbappe, but I just don't think like you put all your eggs in the Zidane basket, like just in order to sign one player. If that's the case, if there's only one manager in the world who could harmonize a locker room with Mbappe, which is not true, then maybe you should rethink your signing. But I don't think that to be the case, Mahmoud, if that makes sense. All right. Thank you, man. All right. The Weekend is next up. 3 years. Okay. So the question for the listeners at home was, as an Ivan Frestenetta alternative, would Kyle Walker on a 3-year deal make sense? I love Kyle Walker. I've been a champion of signing him for a few months now before any reports circulated around. I looked at the fact that his contract ends in 2025, and I asked the question, like, with 1 year left on the deal, could you just talk with City and maybe he wants a change of scenery, and he seems to get along well with the Real Madrid players just based on no information, just the fact that he seems to speak very highly about us and press conferences and gets along well with Vinicius and co and stuff within the games and after the game. But on a 1 to 2 year deal, I don't know, 3 years feels like a bit of a stretch commitment. What is he? Isn't he 30? What is he? 30? 33. Nah, I don't know. 3 years, I wouldn't do it. I'd at least Ivan Fresneda is super young. Like, you could. I'm not a huge Fresneda fan as some others are, but he has at least room to improve. He's only 18, and he would be a low-risk signing. Kyle Walker, 3-year contract, and I assume that he's going to get paid handsomely throughout. You don't want like another Hazard situation. Not to say not to put them in the same bracket, but I'm just talking purely on age here. I wouldn't do it. 3 years, no. 1 to 2 years, I'd do it. 3 years is a stretch. Does that answer your question, The Weeknd? Okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't even know like what if the 3 years thing. The reason I kind of went along with it was because I thought maybe you saw a 3-year deal somewhere being reported. But 3 years I wouldn't do. That's the problem. That's the challenge with some of these older players. I don't know if I would do long-term contracts for any older player. So that's the challenge. So if you're getting an experienced player, if Florentino can somehow coax that player into signing a 1 to 2 year short-term deal and being a part of this, then that is ideal. But I just don't know if you can do that on short-term deals. But maybe you can. I don't know. If you can do it, great. I'm a huge Kyle Walker fan. I think he would be a huge help in the squad. Yeah, this is the other thing. This is the one thing that I should bring up. What's the pitch to Kyle Walker? Like, would he be happy with the pitch that tells you, well, hey, we'd love to have you, but we do have Dani Carvajal here, so you may or may not play the big games. We all have our opinion on who we think should play the starting right back role between Carvajal and Walker, I'm sure. But the club's stance is, I'm sure, different than our opinion. So while it's very possible that the day would come Kyle Walker would start over Carvajal, but right now, when you're pitching it to him, how do you pitch it to him? And would he be okay with that kind of role? That's the other question. That's a huge question that he has to be on board with that, beyond the financial side of things. The Weeknd, do you have any other questions? Okay, cool. Thank you, man. There's a comment in the chat here from Lubu saying, it's Vasquez stopping us from getting a right back and Odriozola. Which this has been stated in the past. We've spoken about this on the podcast that, you have these guys under contract. It's hard. Like, Vasquez is not some random right back like a Cicinho or a Diogo. What was his name? Carlos Diogo, like just a random guy. These are guys who have been here since they were kids. They're well respected. They're locker room guys. So it's a little bit trickier to juggle and move these guys on or demote them or whatever, however you want to frame it. But I do find it strange that we have no problem putting 800 midfielders. But when it comes to right back, we can only have one. Let's be honest, Vasquez is like this converted right back. But okay, if you wanna push it, we can only have these two. We can't have, but midfielders, there's no limit. Let's stockpile for the future, and it's okay. It's okay that Modric and Kroos are still around. But when it comes to the right back, Carvajal and Vasquez are the only ones. I've been kind of grappling with that ideology and how they're treating that position, because I feel like it can be upgraded. All right, next up is Shea Khatiri. Oh, God. Everybody brace yourself. Shea, remember, concise, please. Okay, let's do that one first. So the first question is, if Mbappe arrives, what's my ideal starting 11? Okay, you're putting me on the spot, and I just want to, as always, I feel like I have to put disclaimers out when I talk about lineups and starting lineups. Is that I just want to put it out there. I'm wrong all the time, and I don't have the answers to this. And the starting 11 can change constantly, like based on form, what works. Like, I could put out a lineup and then, a month into the season, this could be a disaster and needs to be tweaked. Like, you know what I mean? So don't come at me. Like, if your favorite player is not in the starting lineup, I don't hate the player, okay? I love all these guys. There's sometimes, just hear me out, though. I would go Camavinga and Nets. And then, no, okay. I'd go Courtois, Militao, Alaba, with the disclaimer that I think Rudiger, is good enough to start for us and can be interchangeable. Like, again, there's a rotation aspect too. Carvajal right back, Fran Garcia left back, Tchouaméni, Camavinga, and Cruz in midfield, with Bellingham as a kind of roaming, floating 10 and a diamond who can go to both wings. And then Vinicius and Mbappe. So in that scenario, you're benching Rodrigo and Fede and Modric and Ceballos and whoever else. That's my lineup. Shay, what else do you got? Start, bench, sell between Xabi Alonso, Casemiro, and Makelele. Start Xabi, bench Casemiro, sell Makelele. Yeah, and that's not. I don't think. I don't think it's necessarily like selling Makelele doesn't mean he's the third best defensive midfielder on that list. I think it's more out of respect to Casemiro, who has been with us a long time. He's a club legend. In the Real Madrid legacy hierarchy, he's undoubtedly above Makelele. And, this is a little bit fuzzy. Makelele could have also maybe done a little bit more, contractually speaking, to stay. So that's my reason. Looking at this from a pure Real Madrid legacy standpoint. And I actually think you can argue Casemiro's legacy is higher than Xabi Alonso, but Xabi Alonso was here long enough and part of La Decima and also just so brilliant that I would justify that. But out of curiosity, are these your three best defensive midfielders in Real Madrid history? Okay, so Redondo might be there, should be there, and he not only starts, but he also gets knighted. He's number one for me. Yeah. Did you have any other questions, Shay? All right. Thanks, man. Always a pleasure. Okay. Go back to the requests. Next up is Aro Nomega. Going to invite you on. Hey, buddy. How are you? Yeah, I can hear you. Great. This is a great question. So the question is, just speaking, Aro kind of brought up a bit of our recent loan history with Llorente, Odegaard, Kubo. I think those were the three that mentioned, and whether Arda Güler made the right choice to stay rather than go out on loan. Is that correct? Is that the question? Yeah. It's always kind of fuzzy to me what is the actual scientific answer to this stuff? Like, is it better to train with the best players in the world at Real Madrid and be with Carlo Ancelotti and learn from the best players, even if you're not playing much, or is it better to go out on loan? I think in this case, it makes sense that he would stay. Though I don't think it's illogical to loan him out either, to be quite honest with you, because I don't know how much he'll play. I think he will play enough and learn enough in his stint staying here. And also loaning is a risk too. Like, we've seen the risk of a loan with Renier at Dortmund, or Mayoral at Wolfsburg, or who else? off the top of my head. There's a couple more. Who? Sorry? Latasa just been a disaster all around. I mean, and then basically all of the Valladolid guys. There was a one point that we thought it was a good idea to loan everyone to Valladolid because it was close to home and Ronaldo Nazario was the president, and basically everyone we loaned there just didn't play. So there's also the risk of the loan spells going wrong. It's possible Arda Güler is good enough that he would start anyway, but it depends on the size of the club too. All that stuff. So I understand the logic in keeping him. And as I said in the beginning of the podcast, while I think he's competing with many players, again, it's worth reminding everyone that he does have a unique skill set. And the point I made, I think, when did I make this point? I don't know. It's all a blur to me now. But at some point I made a point that Güler as a right winger, think about all of those international breaks and trips to South America that Rodrigo and Vinicius and co have to come back from. It'd be nice to just have when they come back, when Rodrigo comes back, you don't have to play him because you could just put Arda Güler on the wing. There's definitely been situations like that. If Carlo goes for more of a 4-3-3 approach where he wants two wingers, I think it would be great. In that situation, he's going to definitely play. So I think he'll play enough. And if he doesn't, then at the end of the season, we'll have to, even mid-season, we'll have to kind of maybe reflect on this and say, well, that was a disaster. Why did we just not loan him out if we were going to not play him? Because we've seen that in the past too. We bring someone back and not play him even a second when he could have just at least been developing somewhere, right? So there's a chance that could happen too. I guess we'll know the answer to this soon. But it's a good question. I don't really know necessarily. Is it better to play sporadically and periodically, but learn from the best at Real Madrid, or is it better to loan them out? But I think there is justification in Arda staying. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Arrow. All right. Next up. Beast _174. Just a heads up, guys. I got 17 minutes left, and please keep it concise. I think you guys all been doing a great job with that, so please keep it up. Beast, are you there? Yes, I can. Yep. So the question is, what formation do I think Real Madrid will use next season? And I have no idea. I also don't believe these reports that come out in the Spanish press saying that, formation change incoming. That may very well be true, but the reality is I don't for a second believe that even Carlo Ancelotti knows what he's going to do. We've seen Carlo Ancelotti start the season one way and a month later completely change it again. So I don't even think we can say, maybe these guys were told by this and that. Even Carlo Ancelotti, I don't think knows his best formation or lineup yet. So I don't know the answer to this beast. But I think we could see if we're to see a formation change. I don't see the 3-5-2. I know a lot of fans have pitched that. I don't see that happening. If there is one, I would guess it's something more in Ancelotti's ballpark, and that something is a diamond or 4 midfielders. We've seen that in the past from him, and most notably the 2014-2015 season when he had Modric, Kroos, James, and Isco together. You could see a variation of that. I think if there's a formation change to something closer to that than a 3-5-2. Make sense? Yeah. All right. Thanks, Beast. Appreciate you. We're going to bring up creativity, man. It's a high standard name to live up to. You better come in with a very creative question. Someone in the chat is asking Kiyan, what is your ideal lineup? I actually answered this exact question. You may have joined late. You can go back and listen to it after the podcast. Hello, how you doing? Great. What's your question? So the question is whether Mbappe comes or not. Why aren't we talking about Joselu? I think look, I think we've talked about him to the reasonable ratio that a player like Joselu needs to be talked about. We talk about him, but I I don't think anyone in the fan base is really that excited about Joselu starting for Real Madrid. He's 33 years old. He's coming off his best season. That's great. He's not going to give you the same amount of goals that Benzema did. And Benzema, actually, despite like the decline last season, at least numbers-wise, was pretty solid. So we're just the reason why I think we're not talking about Joselu as much as like a star striker is because we're all pretty worried that we're just going to score less goals than last season. And last season, I think we all felt we could have scored more. So that's the concern. Does that make sense? Yeah. And so the Cactus J in the chat is bringing up the fact that Joselu had 17 goals in a relegation team. And I guess probably the point you're trying to make, correct me if I'm wrong, is that, maybe he could score more if he plays around more talent, which I think is a fair point. He's really good. He was one of the best strikers in La Liga last season. There's no doubt about that. And Creativity Man is pointing out the fact that Ancelotti has the ability to turn things around. I think that's part of the problem, Creativity Man, is that he is the type of manager that sometimes you throw at him whatever squad exists and hope that he can maximize it, which, that's his job. That's not his fault. But we also want to just maximize the squad we give him so that he can do even more. You know what I mean? But yeah, I like my personal opinion is I think Joselu is a really good player to have. I think he was a fantastic signing, basically zero risk for a player. I think would have made sense even last summer to have in the squad, not just this summer after Benzema's departure. But I don't think he can be the only striker. That's my issue. Unless somehow Rodrigo goes into the false nine role and scores 20 to 30 goals, Bellingham brings 15 goals from midfield, Fede goes back to his scoring streak. All that stuff is important too. Like, you're going to get everyone to chip in. It's just hard for me to see how you can go into next season successfully without signing another star striker. All right, Creativity Man, thanks for your insight. We're going to move on, okay? Because we got about 11 minutes left. We're going to bring in Avent, one of our beloved Discord mods, onto the stage. Avent, are you there? Yes, we can. What's up? Yeah, let's do it. So we're going to go over the results. Okay, so for those listening at home, these are the results of the 2022-2023 Player of the Season Awards as voted on in our Discord channel. So even I'll run through these because the people at home can't hear your voice, okay? So this is the final tally. This is the most objective and unbiased voting system in the history of football, because everything else is a mess. It's just fans voting for their favorite player. Best goalkeeper, Thibaut Courtois, shocking. Number 1. Number 2, Andre Lunin. Other, third. Somehow there were votes for Other and Andre Lunin. You got to respect that. Best defender, Eder Militao, 1. David Alaba, 2. Antonio Rudiger, 3. Best midfielder, 1. Toni Kroos, 2. Eduardo Camavinga, 3. Fede Valverde. Best attacker, Vinicius Jr., 1. Karim Benzema, 2. Rodrigo, 3. And here are the best player awards. Vinicius, 1. Courtois, 2. Camavinga, 3. So somehow Camavinga, the second best midfielder, was higher than Toni Kroos in the best player award. But I think the best player one is pretty accurate. Vinicius, Courtois, Camavinga. I think that's pretty solid. Avent, did you want to add anything else to it? I'd probably go the same. I agree with the list. Vinicius 1, Courtois 2, Camavinga 3. I agree with that. Yeah. Thank you, man. Avent, are we doing any other awards this summer, or is this it? Oh, Avent left. You can just tell me in the chat if you want. All right, 4 minutes. Okay, so we got two more questions. Abhishek Mahajan, you there? Abhishek, if you're speaking, we can't hear you. Are you muted? Okay. I don't know what's going on with Abhishek's mic, or maybe he pieced out to the bathroom for a second. So we'll bring up MJ. Yeah. So, the question is for listeners at home. With Real Madrid marketing and going to the U.S. for a preseason tour again, will they ever go back to Asia? I know they've gone to China. You mentioned Australia, which is not technically Asia. I guess the answer to this question, MJ, is they'll go where the money goes, where the money is. It's possible for that reason they'll go to the Middle East if they go to Asia. China, it could be on the table for the future. I don't know. China is obviously a huge market for something like the NBA. So, and obviously Florentino has taken the team there before. I feel like it'll be wherever the money is. For selfish reasons, I'd love it for it to be on this side of the planet, but that's just my selfish reason, not necessarily what's best for everybody. I will say, like, when I looked around Vegas, I remember last season, and for any city really, but I'm like I was thinking this must be just a cash cow because the ticket prices were out of control. The stadium is massive. I mean, think about even the upcoming Clásico. It's like Dallas seems kind of random, but it's the AT&T Center, the Cowboy Stadium. That's a lot of tickets. A lot of, like, I'd be curious, and this is now just off the top of my head, just thinking out loud. Is it actually, like, what's the difference between a Clásico in the league and a Clásico in Vegas, which with, like, rich Americans just not caring what the price is? I mean, I'm sure they care on some level, but the tickets are also out of control. Yeah, so some people are saying the Clásico tickets are for around 400. I don't know if you're speaking about the preseason ones or the okay, you're saying the Dallas ones preseason. Yeah, that's crazy. So that's and like what does the AT&T Center fit, like 100,000 something or something like that? It's a cash cow, man. So would countries in Asia pay 400 per ticket for a preseason game? I don't know. So in the Middle East, I think you could see it. AT&T Stadium is 80,000. Still, Lucas just joined. What's up, Lucas? We're actually wrapping up. Sorry, buddy. But MJ, yeah, I maybe, but I wouldn't rule it out. I'm sure it's on the table at some point. I definitely wouldn't rule it out, but it probably goes to a rich country. Make sense? Thank you, MJ. I always see you around in the comments, the questions. I really appreciate you, man. Thank you. Bavesh, if this is super quick, like 10 seconds, I can take your question as well, okay? So we're going to bring Bavesh on and see how quickly you can swing it. Bavesh, are you there? Bavesh? Hello, we can hear you. Can you be quick with this one? Okay. So the question was, with Rodrigo underperforming his XG last season, would a front three of him, Guler, and Vinicius work? I think it works. For one, I don't believe that what we saw of Vinicius's XG to goal ratio last season is real. I think that's just an anomaly. I think he is a better goal scorer than his league numbers suggest. He had some bad luck, and that'll normalize, I think. With regards to that front three working, sure, I think it works. I mean, like, there was a stretch, remember, when Benzema was missing last season in the fall, where it was Vinicius, Rodrigo, and Fede Valverde up top, and they were just tearing teams apart. Remember when Fede was scoring every time he kicked the ball? it probably works in spurts and streaks. I don't know if it's a long-term solution because I don't think Rodrigo is suited to play that role every single game. I think it's more of something that you can do in emergency situations. I don't think it's a long-term solution. But I'm not against the idea in theory, in practice. Like if you need to play that, I think it would work. I don't see why it wouldn't. Guler goes on the right, Rodrigo roams and attacks the box for probably, ideally for him, more low crosses and cutbacks, not aerial crosses. He's actually decent in the air for a winger, but not as a striker. And there's enough creativity there and movement from all three of those and fluidity that I think it would work fine in spurts. Bhavesh, thank you, man. Guys, thank you. Thank you, man. I hope you guys enjoyed it. So we'll try to do this more often. Today was kind of like I was supposed to have a special guest. Said special guest, who I won't spoil, had to reschedule, so I'm trying to work with this person to get them back on the podcast at a future date. So I figured I have some time. I might as well just do a live. We do have a busy podcast schedule coming up. For those of you guys who have been keeping track or think actually like that we haven't been active in the past week, we've done 3 shows at least on Patreon. One of them was a live call. One of them was a mailbag. One of them was Matt and Ruben. So we've been very active. You just haven't been able to hear the podcast because you're not a patron. So make sure you go to patreon.com/Managing Madrid to get access to all of our content. And if you're in Los Angeles, Houston, Dallas, guys, please, I know like there's a lot of you listening to this. Stay on the call for 1 second. There's a lot of you guys listening to this who I know have told me that you'll be at those podcasts and are looking forward to it. And I haven't seen you book your spot yet. The reason this is important is because we have to know numbers because it really helps us with logistics and the prices go up if you don't do it. Please book ASAP. It helps all of us if you're planning on coming. And if you're not planning on coming, that's fine. You just miss out on a good time and you miss out me giving away signed stuff from Real Madrid players. But please, Los Angeles, Dallas, and Houston, those 3 cities, if you're planning to attend, just click the link in the show notes. And if you're on the live call, you don't know, I'm just going to put the link in the chat and you can do that just by clicking the link, okay? Guys, thank you. This was a pleasure. I got to run. We'll be back, I think, tomorrow, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So see you there. And peace out. All right. Thanks for listening, guys. Before we wrap it up, we wanted to give a quick shout out to our patrons over on patreon.com/Managing Madrid who do so much to support the show. We thank you guys all for being part of the Real Madrid family and growing with us. It's been an honor, absolute pleasure, and we hope to continue growing this thing. Shout out to our $10 plus patrons specifically because if you pledge $10 or more, you get a specific shout out on the podcast in addition to getting guaranteed responses to your questions and getting access, of course, to all the content we do. So shout out to these $10 plus patrons: Brandon Alvarez, Willie Reed, Will Sousa, Wei Pairing, Wamik Jamal, Tobias Arroyo Botcher, Tahmid Kalam, Sushank Damala, Sujai Wani, Somanshu Singh, Sheikh Hatiri, Sergio Arispe, Santos Solorzano, Samuel Justin, Samar Z, Sai Mohan, Sasi Kumar, Rodrigo Balmaceda, Rishi D, Phoenix, Peter Powell, Paulo Fierro, Patrick Diafati, Oscar Barrera, Nico Laxo, Nicholas Moeller, Nick Ribeiro, Nelson Mazariego, Naveen Babu Ramesh Babu, Mowgli, MJ Diego, Michael Zinberg, Marin Myrtle, Matthew Atkins, Martin Ridman, Magnus Lext, Logan Stahl, Leon Stavronakis, Kunal Tilakar, Crystal Glass, Kevin Rivera, Jose Osorio, Jose Cruz, John Fernandez, Jeff Soa, Jason Fitz, Jacob P., Ian Marley, HM, Graham Gerard, Gary Kohut, Frederick Rantakiro, Frederick Sundros, S.A. Davisito, Eloy Enriquez, Edward Sossman, Daniel Williams, Connor McMorrow, Christian Toft, Christian Acosta, Brendan Powers, Brandon Stevens, Arnab Mukherjee, Armand Gashi, Armando L., Anthony Tharp, Andres Silvestre, Ananya Kumar, Alex Steiberg, Azaz Hussein, Adrian Rios, Adar Zalukovic, Adam Dorsey, Bella Chow, Varun, Ramtin Maghrur, Fabian Moreno, and Daniel Smith. Absolute legends. Thank you guys so much, and Hala Mari.